Happy Monday, everybody. Monday morning quarterback episode 183. I apologize for missing last week. Got held up an extra day in Oklahoma for the Outlaw Nationals and didn't make it back in time. So if we're going to keep doing these every week, I need to plan ahead and kind of have one done in case I get hung up at a race due to a rain out or flight cancellation or whatever. But we're back this week. And it is the continuation of the ride height setup scaling. Today's video is done in the shop. We're going to go over the scaling of that race car and all of that. Before we jump into that, had a couple good questions from the last video that I want to answer. The first one is, do coil springs have the same life expectancy as a torsion bar? And the answer is no. Typically, a coil spring will last much longer. In most scenarios, we're not getting it as close to the yield point as we would on a torsion bar. There are scenarios and applications where a coil spring does not last long. Many moons ago in my NASCAR days, that's when coil binding was becoming a very common thing, and we were coil binding at every single racetrack. When you rode around with those springs fully compressed, they were like in the garbage at the end of a 300, 400, 500 mile race. So, but for our applications, micros, midgets, sprint cars, quarter midgets, we're not taking them to the limit. And so they will typically last several seasons, not 20, 25 races like a torsion bar. Great question though. The next one was, in our video last week where I go about setting the ride heights, is what's the best way to set the ride heights? And there's a couple different ways you can go about it, right? If you need to raise the car, like substantially across the back, you can go to shorter block heights, or you can just put turns in that corner. Typically, if I gotta wind more than a couple turns in a corner, I'm just gonna change the block height and go about it that way. But it's kind of a preference thing there. The last one was, do different types of cars, like wing to non-wing, require different corner weights? Yes, they do. They went on to elaborate about different tracks, sizes and shapes. And yeah, anything that's going to require a different setup, right? You're going to need different stagger, different wheel spacing. Anytime you're getting into those type of scenarios, you're probably going to need a slightly different amount of left rear, right rear weight or cross weight, as we describe in this video. So yeah, those types of things need to be adjusted with your whole setup. Never should you make a gigantic swing, say on right rear wheel spacing. So never should you be like, oh, I need to move my wheel 2.5 inches, right? Your wheel probably needs to come in a certain amount, and then other things need to be done to tighten up your race car as well. You don't want to make a giant swing on just one particular thing, in my experience. So without further ado, this is the video we filmed in the shop where we go over scaling. We hope you enjoy that, and then we'll be back. How's it going? Back here for part 2, scaling. Why is it important to scale your race car? So you know what your corner weights are, you know how much right rear or left rear weight you have, or cross weight, how much nose weight, how much rear weight, is your car going to make minimum weight? It's really important to know all of those things. I don't necessarily scale every week. I will spend a good bit of time on the scales when I first build a new car, and what I'll do is I'll scale it with my baseline setup, and then any potential changes I foresee, I'll kind of science that stuff out. So if I say, all right, I'm starting with, in this car, like a pair of 725 bars in the back, but there might be an instance where I want to put a 700 in the right rear. What is that going to do? Put the 700 in, recheck my ride height. What did it do to my scale numbers? Make a note of that. And I'll kind of make 3 or 4 different setup changes. Slicks off, am I going to add, I want to add cross weight. Okay, with this bar package, if I want to add 2% of cross weight, what do I have to do? Is it a half a turn in the left rear, a half out of the right rear? Is it more than that? So I'll science all that stuff out so I have a good baseline, because when you're at the racetrack, number one, you don't have time to do it. And number two, trying to find a level piece of ground at most dirt tracks in America is like next to impossible, especially micro tracks. There's a few sprint car tracks where you could scale, but you just don't have time throughout the race night. So And to me, it's important to know when I want to make that setup change, what exactly it's doing to the car. Like, how big of a change is that? So car's sitting here, I got the scales on. I'm going to zero the scales and then get the car up on the scale pads, and we will talk about some of the numbers we're seeing and different scenarios. So we've got the car on the scales. I want to recap a couple things in case you didn't watch the previous episode, which would have been Monday Morning Quarterback 182 on setting ride heights. So a couple things before you scale. Air pressure set. You've blocked your car. You want to make sure the front tires are straight. That's very important. If they're turned one way or the other, it will skew your numbers. And then whether you want to scale with the driver in the car or the driver out. We went over that a little in the ride height video. I typically scale with the driver out just because Hudson's not always out here when I'm doing this. But I have previously put him in the car, and I know how much rear weight that adds and how it changes the cross weight. So those are just a couple things to consider before you get the car up on the scales. Okay, so we got the car up on the scales, and to me, looking at this, it has more right rear weight than I want to start, or not enough cross weight, depending on what lingo you talk. A lot of sprint car guys would go off of whether the car has right rear weight or left rear weight, how much right rear weight it has. And then guys who came up out of quarter midgets or pavement racing, they talk cross weight a lot. Another thing that I forgot to mention earlier, but we talked about in the previous video, these left rear shocks have a lot of rebound, so make sure you have your left rear shock all the way open when you put your car on the scales, so we're not holding a corner down and giving ourselves a false reading. So again, this car has more right rear weight than I would prefer, so I'm going to go around the car, and you can adjust that by just working on the back of the car. I'm going to go around and X some more cross weight or left rear weight in the car. Just a little on each corner is how I prefer to do it versus all in the back. So I'm going to go around and make those adjustments, and then we'll come back and check the scale numbers and see if it is satisfactory for us. So I went around and X'd a quarter turn of left rear weight in the car to get my cross weight up and take some right rear weight out of the car. That moved us from 20 pounds of right rear weight to about 10, which is right where I wanted. So that's good. Another couple things to keep in mind are front to rear weight. So make sure on a micro where your motor slides forward and back, that's like your second largest piece of ballast in the car next to the driver, that the motor is set where it's going to be. So make sure your chain tension is correct before you do the scaling. That's not really an issue on a midget or sprint car, but on a micro it definitely is. And make sure this thing's ready to roll on the racetrack. So it's how much stagger you're going to run, how much fuel you're going to start with, and get that right. If you get this thing on the scales and it has more rear weight than you want, you can always lengthen your chain and get the motor a little bit farther forward. If you have ballast in the car, you can move that around to make it exactly how you want. It's really important just to kind of know where you're at with these things. Again, I don't check it every week. Once I know what turns I need to be with what blocks to get the corner weights that I want, I'll kind of run with it. But if we go somewhere and run really good and I really like the balance of the car, typically when I get home I'll put it on the scales just to see where it's at, because inevitably throughout the night as the track slows down and slicks off, you'll make some adjustments. So I'll kind of want to know where that is. Another thing that's really important that you can kind of science out ahead of time is, as the track slicks off, you're going to move your right rear wheel in and your left rear wheel out. What does that do to your corner weights? And that's a good thing to note as well. So for every action there's a reaction, and as you're moving things around the car and making adjustments, it's nice just to know how big those adjustments are when it comes to corner weights. Thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe these videos if you're getting something out of them, and we'll keep making them. Hope you guys have a great week. Hope you guys enjoyed that video and got something out of it. It seems like these shop videos are doing better. So we're going to plan more of those. If there's a certain thing you would like to see us cover, comment, send us a message. I think Monday Morning Quarterback's back as a weekly show. People are wanting it. Again, I don't go to a racetrack without somebody saying, hey, thank you for the videos. We always appreciate that. And so we're going to keep going. So if you have a good idea of something you want to see or you think people could benefit from, let us know. We're going to continue to produce these weekly. Like and subscribe, share this video so all your buddies can see it. That helps us out as well. And we hope to see you all back here next Monday at 9 p.m. Have a great week.